and welcome to another edition of Oshkosh Area Politics. I'm Paul Esslinger, former mayor of the city of Oshkosh, joined again by my co-host Ben Schneider, who is a former member of the school board in Oshkosh. Today we're going to be talking to another candidate, Republican candidate for the 53rd Assembly District. His name is Frank Frassetto, and he will be going against two other people running as Republicans for the primary for that Assembly District in August. He will be running against Michael Schra and Chris Schuler. So with that, Frank, thanks for coming in and talking to Ben and I for a little while.
Well, Paul and Ben, thanks very much for having me on board.
Excellent. Well, let me just start off with the obvious question. Why in God's name do you want to get involved in this, and what are your plans?
Well, that's one of the responses I normally get from people. It's one of two. What the heck are you doing? And then secondly, it's about time. And frankly, this is one of those decisions where I've had to turn down numerous requests in the past. But the way the climate is right now, I thought you need to have somebody down there that's got a lot of experience. And we're at a situation now, domestically anyway, where the kids are all old enough, and I'm not concerned at all about any of the heated issues that have plagued some of the other folks who have been in office. And it seemed now was the right time to take all of the experience that I've been building up over the years and put it to work down in Madison.
Okay. Two other guys running as Republicans, as I said, Michael Schra, Chris Schuler.
Kurt Schuler.
I'm sorry, Kurt. Apologize for that. Why is Frank Frassetto any different from those guys? If I'm living in the 53rd, why am I checking off your name versus the other two guys in August?
Well, I think what you're going to conclude at the end of the day is that I've got a proven conservative track record, and I've got real practical experience. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I've been in every level of government over the course of the last 20 plus years. I've been a town chairman for the last 14 years and still am. I've been on the county board for a few years when I was up in the northeast side of the city of Oshkosh, and worked with Congressman Petri when I got out of college after a short stint with an independent TV station, and then ran a federal agency under the Bush administration. A little bit of time I spent over at Department of Commerce on the state level. So when you put all of that together, what you're looking at is somebody who understands the integration between the different levels of government, where some of the overlaps are, where the redundancies are, and where we need to start looking to find core competencies. So, you know, our first priority obviously is job creation. And I've been around a number of businesses over the course of time to have a really good indication of what we need to do as a state in order to spur the private sector or get out of the way of the private sector so that the job creators can do what they need to do. And then the other part of that is, what else do we do to shrink government? And it's not just the old bromide of shrinking government. You know, I've had my fingers in a lot of these different areas and know a lot of people, and the real reformers in there who all they need is a little bit of assistance, and we can move the culture of sort of the status quo. Let's have our automatic cost of living adjustments, and we'll just keep doing things the way we've been doing them. And frankly, we don't have that. We don't have that luxury. I mean, obviously, the governor and the legislature last year took care of the budget, the structural deficit of the budget. But that's only the first part of it. The second part of it is to continue to move along and to bring efficiencies and cost effectiveness to our government. That's what I expect as an individual, and that's when I look at the 53rd. It's a rural district, which is a big part of my background, and it's also an assembly that we should be able to push if we're able to maintain the majority, and it's likely that's going to happen. We can continue to push these ideas, the conservative ideas, and get the state government further under control and to keep pushing it in that direction.
Okay. One more question, Ben, and then I'll turn it over to Ben. Of course, all the activity with Governor Walker, the Act 10. You know, I think the main argument with the Democrats, the liberals, was he didn't go about doing this the right way. I don't know what the right way is, and I think, quite frankly, it was an excuse just because they didn't like the results. But he did what he did. Governor Walker did what he did. The recall elections are over. Governor Walker has kind of come out and said, you know, looking back, I may have done things a little bit differently. If it had been Governor Frassetto, would you have done the exact same thing? Did Governor Walker do it correctly? What would have Governor Frassetto have done in this situation?
Wow, I just started running for assembly and already
Now
Governor
you're-
Frassetto is being talked about. Holy cow. That's a pretty interesting hypothetical, Paul. My style is much more collaborative. I tend to look at what is the goal? What do we need to do? And by the way, let's put it in historical perspective too. We've had this structural deficit for a long time.
Right.
And all we continue to do is push it forward and push it forward. That's bothersome, and somebody had to do something about it. Now, we also know, if history is our guide, that when you try to stake out a position and say, we need to get here, and the other side is over here, you end up somewhere in the middle, or you end up somewhere on either side of the chain. The fact of the matter is, Wisconsin, like the rest of the country, was in significant financial distress. The economy was not doing good, and we were sitting on a $3.6 billion structural deficit. So what would Assembly Person Frassetto have done? He would have voted along with Act 10, and that's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. What the governor did, I'm not privy to any of the inside information. Maybe he did say, look, we need to get this under control, and I'm willing to lose my 4-year term, not realizing he was going to be potentially a 2-year governor. And maybe he had those discussions. Who knows?
Well, the reason I asked, I apologize for taking a little bit longer here, but I think he raises a good point. You're not running for the governor, obviously. But the reason I correlate it with that is I think you and anyone else running for Assembly, or even Senate, is going to be, you are either going to be tied to the governor or you are not going to be tied to the governor. And we have civility, and I think people want to know how civil their representative or their state representative or assemblyman or assembly person is going to be.
Right.
So the reason I ask is, what I was trying to get to is, are you the inclusive person where you would have gone to the Democrats and said, hey, we do have this problem, we need to solve it, do you have an answer? Or are you the type of person that just says, I know what the problem is, I'm going to solve the problem, and here is what I'm going to do? I mean, is there a difference? Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about. The business of governing is one where you need to engage people. I don't know if those type of engagements took place or not. If you're getting someone who is recalcitrant and you say, look, the #1 priority is we need to reduce this structural deficit, and here is a plan to get it done. And the other side comes back and says, we don't think that's really that big of a problem, and we would recommend this over here. You clearly have two different positions. So I'm one where I want to get rid of it so that our kids, well, #1, that's the first beginning of where we need to go. You get rid of that structural deficit. Now you can start actually solving some of the problems. So in this particular instance, it was a no-brainer is what I'm telling you.
Right.
There are some, and frankly, if you want to use a little bit of a metaphor, let's say you're training a dog and you got to have that first correction. This was a major correction. Mm-hmm. That dog isn't going to do that again. So the idea is now we need to start the heavy lifting. Now we need to continue to, #1, maintain the gains we've made, and #2, look for all of those other areas where we can continue to save more money. So I'm probably not even answering your question, but the fact of the matter is this was a no-brainer decision. And the governor, if he had said, look, they're not willing to come this way, well, that's fine.
Right. Okay.
Well, and you perhaps answered much of this next question through your answers to the previous few questions, but just quite simply, why are you a Republican?
Why am I a Republican?
Right.
I was a Republican in 6th grade when I was leading this Holy Name of Jesus students for Nixon against the arch enemy Steve Frassetto, cousin for the McGovern folks. Smaller government, limited government, individual responsibilities, fiscal responsibility. Those are all things that we do as a family, and those are all things that the Republican Party principles are about. And that's going to be the key in trying to continue to move this state forward. It's pretty straightforward.
So, and I get that, and you know, and as I reflect on the 14 senators that well,
abandon their post.
Yeah, people that can say abandon their post. You know, as you look at being our next representative, and for the viewers' benefit, it's currently your seat's currently held by an incumbent, Representative Spanbauer, who's chose not to seek re-election. So those that currently have Representative Spanbauer as their representative in the 53rd knows that that seat will be open, and this is what the primary will whittle it down to.
Right.
So, how do you feel about the individuals that abandoned their post? How do you feel about those that disagreed with the governor and kind of chanted shame versus perhaps offering solutions?
Well, it's reprehensible, first of all. And secondly, back to your comment about civility. The institution deserves respect. The individuals in it create their own level of respect. But the institution itself, just the course of engagement and discourse needs to be returned to common courtesy, common decency. I mean, these are things that your mom and dad taught you when you were kids. And you ultimately embraced that, and as adults, you put it to use. In the business of governing, this is all about ideas and perseverance and leadership and getting people to move from where we are to a better place over here. And I tend to bring, and it's been successful. Have I reached my Peter principle? How the heck do I know that until we get to it? But it's been successful in the different positions that I've held in the past. And so I will continue to employ that.
You talked about something I think we can all agree on, and that's job creation.
Right.
And the state and obviously our leaders need to do more to kind of get out of the way to let the job creators create jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on some specifics in terms of what you think Madison can do? Because I know the governor set a really lofty goal to create 250,000 jobs by the end of his
2015.
Yeah, and obviously there's a headwind. So do you have any ideas? And I know Paul might take some notes because he's running for the 54th. So perhaps you can educate Paul on that too. But so if you have any specifics, I'd certainly love to hear them.
Well, there are three things that I would right away focus on, and I've heard this in touring and in talking with CEOs in different companies, large, medium, and small. Number one is reliable capital, steady, reliable capital. Now, there are a lot of companies that pretty much have their own line of credit, but there are others who are doing expansion projects that don't have that luxury. So that would be number one, and you know, of course, the venture capital bill stalled in session the last time. It really didn't get out of the gate the first time because of some of the mechanics and language that were in it, and you know, the money was essentially going out of the state as opposed to coming back in for a return on investment. But some of those issues have been modified, made better, and I suspect that that'll be coming out of the next session. The second thing is regulatory reform. Job-killing regulations need to go, and you know, that we're starting in that direction because of the change that occurred. Regulations will be going through Department of Administration, I think it is, for final approval. So that's a good thing, and I've heard that a lot. A lot of guys are saying, I spend X amount of time and resources on regulations, and it seems a little unusual. Mm-hmm. The third thing is a major, and that is a skilled workforce. We have an issue with our workforce, and you can look at a number of different studies where, and a lot of people are working on this. They're trying to do different things, but when you look, there was a study I saw where we were ranked 15th in the country in our education system, which is pretty good. We ranked 46th in our workforce. I mean, that's a heck of a disconnect when the purpose of our educational system is to provide, teach, educate students to have life and career skills. So I think we need to address that in some fashion, but those are three areas.
I don't mean to now monopolize like you were.
That's okay.
Doing.
Well, you're taking shots at me. You might as well just go right on going.
You guys just keep going.
Yeah.
I'll sit back here and watch.
I know people that may not agree with the Republican philosophy will say, well, our governor just inflicted $800 million in cuts to the educational system. Obviously, you supported Act 10. You said it was a no-brainer. So what do you say to those that say, well, how do you create a skilled workforce if we're inflicting cuts in the educational system?
That report would have been reflective of previous years. So my response to that is, well, if we were already giving you and that money was, those resources were available, and this is essentially the result, then I would say we need to do some serious introspection and figure out what's going wrong. And therein lies, again, how do we do this? You know, do we come down with a sledgehammer? No. We look at some of the really cool things that have actually been happening around the state that have been driven by businesses, by local workforce development folks, to come up with solutions to provide a skilled workforce. I mean, Marinette Marine gets a contract. They're going to start bleeding all the welders and these guys are going to Marinette Marine, and so they're leaving the mid-sized companies and the small companies with nothing. But these are the suppliers in that whole supply chain. So where are these workers going to be coming from? I mean, there's a huge dynamic that's going on, and we need to support that. So it's not, let's get our kids ready to go to college. We need to figure out, let's get our kids ready to learn how to weld and to learn how to fabricate and machine and so on and so forth. And that's an area that, I mean, manufacturing is one of the two big industries in the state of Wisconsin, and we need to be focusing on that.
And for the record, because I've heard that rhetoric in terms of the governor cut funding, you know, state aid to the schools, and obviously he had to plug a $3.6 billion deficit.
Right.
But being a sitting school board member at the time that budget settled, after the reduction in state aid, for the first time in, I believe, 7 years, the school district had 0 cuts after a cut in state aid. And the reason why there was 0 cuts, and I say 0 cuts to kids' programs, the reason why there were 0 cuts to kids' programs, which I believe would have a more detrimental impact to student achievement than a reduction in employee benefits. But you know, as a result of the Act 10 reduction, it did not. The school board did not vote to cut any kids' programs. We simply funded we simply balanced the budget by having the employees pay, quote unquote, their fair share.
Right.
So just wanted to make that point for the record.
It's also important too to make sure that we recognize the good things that are happening almost by necessity. My viewpoint is, this is what I expect out of my government to do regularly. Annual assessments, what's working, what isn't working, what can we do better? Not just the usual standard, well, if we cut this, then that means we literally have to cut this over here. Doing business a little bit more efficiently, doing it more effectively, combining some of the school districts and what they're offering. If we've got a great teacher up in one section, feed in some of the technology. I mean, we instituted, as part of a training committee I was on at Rural Development, we had a huge budget. We trimmed that budget from $7 million down to $2 million. And we started instituting online libraries and learning in order to make sure that we had everybody up to speed on that. Some of the older folks said, I don't learn very well that way. I learn better face-to-face. So we need to go to San Diego or wherever. You know, the Las Vegas thing that you heard about for whatever that federal agency was. We said, no. On your own computer, at your desk. This is how we're going to be learning. And so we need to be instituting some of that stuff. I mean, it's education, and so the kids learn that way. Right. Let's use the right classes to teach that way. I'm not saying it's going to happen across the board. I'm just saying let's explore some of these ideas. And by the way, I like to think out loud too. So I'm not making any grand statement or this is where I'm at, but I like to, let's get the conversation going and make sure that that happens all the time, and then implement it.
And one of the good things that I saw with the Act 10 in relation to the school district is that my taxes actually went down in a year, despite all of the draconian cuts that the Liberals keep talking about that came to the school district. You know, despite having 5-6 Liberals on a school board in charge of that budget, we had one moderate, Ben here, that was on the school board there at the time. You know, they actually managed to have a reduction in my taxes and all of our taxes. So I think that's a good thing. I wanted to ask you about in regards to the recall process. Governor Walker came out with the Act 10 proposal. Was voted on. Senators got recalled because the Liberals didn't like the vote. They didn't like Governor Walker because he came up with this idea. And so through our state constitution, people are allowed to be recalled because of darn near anything you want to recall someone.
Wearing a purple shirt, for example.
Right. Well, thank you for the compliment. But the question I have for you is, does this have to stop? Does Assemblyman Frank Frassetto either come up with a plan or, ride the coattails of someone else that comes up with a plan to alter this recall process?
There's no question in my mind. I've been asking some people even before the process started, why isn't the Republican Party or someone coming forward and filing some sort of a, suit of some sort just to stop that and then kind of get a grip on, okay, are we sure we really want to go down this road? But if I am fortunate enough to be elected, Robin Voss already has a bill ready to go.
Right.
And yeah, I would sign on to that. It's going to take a little bit. You need 2 successive legislatures, and you need it's constitutional change, so you need your referendum, and then you have to go through the regulatory writing process and all of that. So it's not going to be an overnight success, but clearly that's just wrong. And it's wrong on many levels too, because this is, well, it doesn't really matter, but it kind of goes all the way down to the smaller levels, smaller municipalities for being recalled. It's wrong.
How do you, there's such a caustic atmosphere, I think, from Republicans and Democrats, and what we're seeing right now, because the Democrats, well, now they officially, I believe, or soon will take over control of the Senate. But I guess what I'm getting, my question is, how do you compromise or govern with a group of people that feel that it's necessary to scream at you if they disagree with you? They'll leave the state if they disagree with you or want to stall something. Or in some cases, we had a local representative, I know Paul's opposition, that yelled to one of his female colleagues, "You're blankety blank dead." Yeah. How do you find, and I saw this in the school board, I found that there's a large percentage of the school board members that I was on with, if they disagree with you, they hate you. They literally just hate you. They won't even acknowledge you when you go in a room. They won't even look at you. You can wave to them. They treat you like you have a contagious ailment. So, and I'm asking this for 2 reasons. One, I like to know, and secondly, if I like your answer, I'm going to take some notes because I like to figure out how to do this. But how do you get along and govern and move Wisconsin forward with people that just seem to just can't accept that someone may have a different idea, and we can get there. We can still get to the same destination, but we may take a different path. Like, for example, deal with the structural deficit.
Right. So
how do you govern with someone that seems to, a group that seems to be so hateful or uncompromising?
Well, we're seeing it. It's been going on for a long time. It just sort of reached, and we don't even know if it's at its apex or not yet, but this sort of behavior, and I'm not so sure it's totally on one side. I'm sure it's a little bit of, it's a little bit of both. But as I've been going around the district and talking with folks, there's a certain level of, when we get into a conversation, it's, what, just go down there, do your best. And see what happens. This is, I've seen some pretty negative things in the past. The first couple of town board meetings we had, if you ever gone to those things, people love to yell and scream, and you're constantly banging the gavel, point of order, and soon people realize, okay, these are business meetings. They're no fun. They're boring. That's kind of where I would like to get to, frankly, where it's steady, it's reliable, it's transparent, and it's boring. The minute President Obama a couple of years ago said he wanted to make government cool, I thought, oh man, that is just the worst thing you could have said. Because you should just go about your work and make sure that you're treating the taxpayer dollars like it's your own, like it's your own. Maybe not your own. I don't know. Ben says he's more conservative than you. So
he makes a sailor on shore leave look conservative.
Yes. So I can't answer that question definitively, Ben, because I don't know. But you know, it's water off a duck's back. If you know that this is the right way to go, and it's proven, because that's the other thing. I mean, we don't have any metrics down there, really. We don't come into this in the forefront and say, okay, this is the goal. This is how we're going to implement it. This is how we're going to measure it, and this is what we're going to do a year later in analyzing it. Because in fact, when one of the bills that was passed during the special session, the Milwaukee Journal carried 2 articles. One was in favor of it, one was against it, written by 2 people looking at the very same data. Okay, you're going to get that all the time, but we need to keep sure that the facts don't end up falling into the dirt and being able to use those as we go forward. The people of the districts that we represent, when you end up talking to them and show them that here's the way things are, you know, they provide a little bit of that comfort level to go ahead back down there. And of course, you're not meeting year-round either, so that's the other good thing. Okay.
Well, Frank, we're literally down to like 2 minutes. If I live in the 53rd Assembly District and I'm interested in Frank, I have a question for him.
Sure.
Can you quickly tell us, do you have a phone number? Do you have a website or anything along that line where I can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I do. You can look at www.frassetto, 2 S's, 2 T's, 53rd.org. That's the website. I use fjfrassetto@gmail.com, so you can get a hold of me that way.
Okay.
Those are 2 good ways, and pretty easiest way to get a hold of me are using those 2 methods.
Okay. Phone number? No phone number?
Yeah, 920-918-8000.
Yeah, and as always, our producer has queued that up on the screen so our viewers can.
He's got the CGI going?
Yeah. He has it up there to let people know how they can get involved in your campaign, and obviously this campaign is for the 53rd, and it's a seat currently held by Representative Richard Spanbauer. So.
August 14th.
August 14th.
That's the D-Day.
Right. Okay. I think we have like 30 seconds left. There was a question I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
The job, you talked about jobs before, the mining bill. Would Assemblyman Frank Frassetto have voted in favor of the mining bill?
Yeah, I knew some folks up in that area. It's very depressed.
Very depressed.
We've made some significant gains in technology. And if you've ever had to fill out some of the questionnaires that we're filling out as candidates right now, this is, you know, there's a lot of status quo that's going on. The mining bill would have been a significant benefit for the entire state. And people kept talking about how Milwaukee was going to benefit from it. Northeast Wisconsin is littered with companies who are tied into the mining.
It's a domino effect.
Domino, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Well, Frank, thank you for coming in for half an hour and beating it around here with Ben and I. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Oshkosh Area Politics. Join us again for the next edition. Good night and God bless.